To welcome everyone to this meeting of Child and Family Services Scrutiny Performance Panel. Particularly, sorry, Chris, I should have known. My apologies. Cabinet member as well and head of service. So, very welcome. Do we have any apologies for absence, Liz?
We've received apologies from Councillor Mike Day and David House.
Okay, thank you. And any disclosures of personal interest that anybody wants to say? No. So that's fine. We'll move on to item 3, prohibition of whip votes. Aren't any as far as I'm concerned, but I'm sure nobody else is going to say anything in that respect as well. So item 4 would normally be the approval of the minutes of the last meeting, but because the last meeting was brought backwards, I think, rather than forwards, backwards, isn't it? Yeah. That means we haven't had time to actually do the minutes in a letter, but that'll be done by the next meeting, so you'll have them for the next meeting. So apologies on that score, but it was only 2 weeks ago that we had our last meeting. Item 4 on the agenda then actually becomes public question time. Have we had any questions, Liz?
No, we haven't received any, Chair.
Okay, and that moves us on very quickly to item 5, Chris, and residential care services. So I assume you're going to take us through the report, or does Louise want to say something first of all?
No, I'm happy to hand over to Chris, but just obviously, I think as we've talked before, this report is in the context of very challenging position we're in regarding lack of suitable placements for children, but we're working very hard to develop our own in-house provision. So very grateful to Julie, to Chris and the team for driving this forward. And I think it is a very positive report showing good progress to be made. So happy to hand over to Chris.
I know you'll come back to TNAT because obviously there were problems there with the inspection, but I'm sure, well, it is mentioned there already.
Okay, can I just check that the microphone's working? That is on, is it? Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, my name's Chris Griffiths. I'm the Principal Officer for Residential Services in Child and Family. The presentation today is just an overview of the development of children's services, residential care services. I'm going to start by just putting a bit of context in around some definitions, just to avoid any sort of confusion as we run through the document, and also then have a discussion around some of the drivers and some of the local and regional priorities that have sort of forged what we're going to do as far as our sort of local aims as well. I'll be addressing some of the challenges and some of the next steps, and the latter part of the report then we'll look at the developments that we've got with TNAT and the focused inspection that's coming up. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so for context, when I've been referring to placement throughout this, it will be purely around children's residential placement, so not to be confused with adult or to be confused with fostering unless I specify. There will be elements of legislation that I'll be referring to, but I'm not going to go through it verbatim. I will just give you a brief summary of what each piece of that is as we go through. Again, I'll touch on a lot of the complexities further down in the report, but I think one of the things that I wanted to try and get across is all the information and everything that we're going through today when we are discussing the placements and how the journeys that these young people get in, having to go through when they are in these placements. The view is that I want to try and make it look as if it's a positive choice rather than the last resort, because I think sometimes, because when I'll be discussing about the problematic circumstances that we find when we haven't got successful searches or breakdown in foster parents, etc., placements, it always seems as if residential is just the last resort, but it can very well be in some instances, if it's therapeutic, if it's thought out correctly, the right choice for some of the children and young people that we're working with. When we are looking at these placements, they do tend to be for older children and young people. Again, I'll be discussing a lot around some of the criteria that we've got to have as a council of when we're putting these young people into the placements. In most situations, the preference is to work proactively to achieve a successful return to the family or the foster where within appropriate timescales. So it's the reunification of the family or reunification to the households where they've got parental responsibility. I've listed on 1.5 about high quality placements to promote the child's sense of belonging. So the nurturing environments, the emotional warmth, good physical care, you know, these should be the minimum standards that we expect when we're putting these young people into these provisions. And that should be whether it's within the house or whether we look external for that as well. I'll come back to 1.6 a little bit when I'm looking at some of the drivers, because I think that's relevant to sort of dovetail in. So moving on to item 2, where we've got local and national drivers, as I've alluded to, we've got Social Services and Wellbeing Act, which I'll refer to as the Act, puts a general duty on the council to secure sufficient placements in its area to meet the needs of the children that are looked after. The council must consider a number and range of accommodation providers within the area, and it states that local authorities must consider the benefits of having a number of providers offering a range of accommodation to meet the different needs and complexity of needs of the young people. So we've also come on to Welsh Government's programme for government. One of the main priorities is to eliminate profit from children's residential care. As I've stated, this is being driven at pace with Welsh Government. There's a consultation document at the minute where they're looking for feedback by the 7th of November. And if I go back up to 1.6, some of the information and some of the research within that document does give feedback from children and young people that suggest they have very strong feelings about being cared for in privately owned placements and in organisations that do actually make a profit from their care. So there is a real big driver, and there is a belief that, you know, that there should be a market for childcare, but not one that makes profit from their situation. So I'm moving down to more of a regional, so back to 2.3. So West Glamorgan Transformational Board's a safe accommodation strategy that sets out to create regional strategic approach to supporting children and young people with complex needs to live well and safe and secure accommodation that meets their needs. And also then to develop proposals for a long-term accommodation profile across the region that ensures appropriate capacity to provide secure accommodation for children and young people with complex needs. 2.4 looks at more local strategies, so specific to Swansea. So the Swansea strategy to support children and young people to remain living safely at home. So that was formerly the Safe Lack Reduction Strategy and our Placement Commission strategy as well, which is where I've got a lot of the research from as part of this report. So specific to aims, which I will read verbatim. So the Children's Residential Service aims specific to Swansea and the region is to provide safe, stable and suitable living accommodation to meet a wide range of wellbeing needs and complexity of needs, to improve wellbeing and stability and support in a trauma-informed environment. So currently this is done through a commissioning process, but we are looking to provide this within our own services, and that is something that we are going to be looking at as far as moving and developing the growth model to make sure that we can say that we're coming from a trauma-informed environment. To live close to home where safe to do so, also to reduce out the county placements in unregulated provision. So unregulated provision would be providers that or provisions that are not registered under CIW, which is the Care Inspectorate of Wales, and also then the reduction of escalation and need of risk. To improve longer term outcomes for children and young people in adulthood, so as they go through the various transitions, making sure that they get the right support in education, employment and training, and as they sort of progress into the job market, 18 plus. Okay, so number 4, I have written see slideshow presentation because we were going to provide a series of slideshows to show in a pictorial slideshow around some of the houses we got within the portfolio. I have withdrawn it only because some of the homes were quite easily identifiable. So I just wanted to, it's something that we may look to bring back when we've got the homes registered at a later date. So I'm going to talk it through. So you'll just have to sort of picture it as I read this out, if that's at all possible. So home number 1 is a CIW registered home. So again, Care Inspectorate Wales, in a semi-rural location with 3 bedrooms. Its current statement of purpose is registered as a short term, so up to 3 months placement. We're frequently having to extend some of the placement move-ons. And this is due to the lack of suitability of placements and the amount of availability of searches as well. So over the last 6 months, we've had 2 young people that have exceeded the 12-week timescale, and this is why we're looking to review during the next statement of purpose consultation. Currently, we have 2 young people that reside in there in the home. So home number 2, this is the initial stages of registration with Care Inspectorate Wales. This is situated in a more urban area. It's a 3-bedroom property. However, due to the requirements with minimum bed sizes within the registration and inspection social care framework, which is RISCA, we're only able to provide a 1-bedroom offer. So the home will provide a short and medium-term placement up to 6 months, and as I've written, is perfectly suited to support semi-independent living and or as a transition into supported accommodation. And that is something we will develop when we are looking at consultation through our signs of not signs of safety, statement of purpose, sorry. So there's currently an older teenager residing at that property. Home number 3. This is one of the new properties. So we received the keys in late June. The property is in a semi-rural area. It's a 3-bedroom semi-detached, which is currently adjoined to home number 4. So it's got with internal access as it stands at the moment. The plan for this home, after quite a few adaptations, is for it to provide a 1-bed semi-secure offer. The property will support step-up, step-down provision from secure accommodation, hopefully meeting the requirements of children and young people who have more complex needs. This is in line with some of the data that we have in around trying to meet the needs of these young people whose needs are a lot more complex. This is likely to be over a medium term, up to 6 months. An initial brief has been submitted and is currently within our surveying team. So we haven't got timescales on that as it stands. Home number 4, this is the adjoining semi-detached property. This is also a 3-bedroom home. The plan for this home is to support emergency crisis placements for children and young people. Emergency placements and crisis placements are ones that are unplanned. So we've usually if people give notice within a 24-hour period, or if things are broken down and we haven't got enough time to plan as we would like. So these tend to be very, as I've listed it as crisis. There's not a lot of time to do a lot of planning in and around the support and the rotas and where the venues are likely to be. So with the growth and with the demand that's come through in and around these provisions, you know, the idea is that this will hopefully be an offer for 2 emergency placements as we move forward. But this is very short term, so this wouldn't be over a 3-month or a 6-month time scale. This would be over 48, 72 hours, where we try to sort of get a more suitable placement for the children and young people that it's needed for. I've put at 4.5 as we develop our in-house offer and portfolio growth and vision. We'll be reviewing all of the statement of purposes. So it's very difficult as we're building homes in isolation and obviously we've got some existing homes at the minute to really get a clear identity. Once we start building the portfolio, we have a full understanding of what the offer is. We will be able to stipulate exactly what each of those homes will be for you know what we will have to offer. The current one that we've got at the moment, which is home number 1, we are finding, again, like I said, as where that was more of a short term, because of the landscape and because of the difficulties that we're having to try and get appropriate provision for some of the children. As I said, we're finding it difficult to move on after 12 weeks. So everything is going to be reviewed as we start to grow the portfolio. So number 5 are the challenges.
Can I just stop you there for a minute, Chris, if I may, just to ask if anybody's got any questions at this point in time?
Okay.
Because we're moving on to a separate phase in the report then, aren't we?
Okay.
And no hands up, or Cheryl, sorry, Cheryl's got a hand up. Sorry, Cheryl, I should have welcomed you to this meeting in the first place because it's your first one, isn't it? So we're very pleased to see you, Hannah.
It is for quite some time, Chair, yes. And going off and saying it's quite some time, you'll have to forgive me if some of the questions I ask are ones that you know the answers to now. But for me, having been out of it for a little while, when we're talking about Chris just touched on the statement of purpose being only 12 weeks, and obviously having to extend those periods. So what does that mean as far as the care inspectorate, you know, as far as they're concerned? But more importantly, what does it mean for the young people involved and their surety and their sort of like feelings of maybe even further abandonment that they're having to be shifted on yet again? I've got a couple of other questions that might have gone on from there. But do you want to answer each one as I've
yeah, that's fine, and that's a great question to start with, because what we're finding is that it's tends to can sometimes be an arbitrary figure that we just pluck out the air 12 weeks, sort of 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is down the line. And what we're finding is whenever we have stipulated something within the statement of purpose, obviously CIW within their rights then come in and that's what they regulate. And that's what they inspect us. So I think it's getting the narrative right to say where it's appropriate to do so and where we have got more of an appropriate transition or move on to a more stable provision, then we are able to meet that requirement within 12 weeks. But where we're not, and it's not okay or it's not safe to do so, if it's not the right appropriate transition for that young person, then it's the narrative that we've got and the evidence that we've got to delay that until it becomes the right time. Because like you said, it's displacement of the young person, it's more upheaval for that young person. So, I don't know what the right answer is as it stands at the minute as far as getting the narrative right for CIW. We're working really closely with the registration team as well as the inspections team, because they're fully aware of what the challenges are, which is what we're going to be looking at when I move on them.
And so for the staff that would be there, they're obviously committed to wanting to be able to support these children and young people for longer. Then it's not that they just think, oh well, it's going to be short term. They are able and willing to be able to support for the longer period should their statement of purposes be reviewed to be able to give that more permanency then.
Yeah, it's to meet the needs of the young people. So, for example, in some instances, the young people may come in, it may be for a week, it may be for a 2-week period, but then we've found more of a stable, longer-term placement for them. And that by that mean it could be more of a therapeutic approach. It could be something that is a solo placement, something that is going to meet the needs. So therefore, we wouldn't want to sort of hold on to that young person for an extended period if it's going to be detrimental to their progression. So, it's all, I think the main crux of us having timeline stipulated is to make sure that we don't get any young people that are drifting, that it's not the right appropriate provision for them, that if they do need therapeutic clinical approach on a daily basis and we're only able to provide that maybe sort of consultation on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, etc., that we are holding on to that young person, and it's detrimental for their progression and positive outcomes.
Okay, so the other question was around the profit making. Okay. I can absolutely understand why young people and children would feel that they're being used as basically, I don't know if I can use terminology, as a cash cow for people to be able to make a profit out of them. And I would certainly have thought that would, in all the trauma that they're going through, I mean, they're going through trauma to actually be in the situation that they're in at that moment in time with looking for a placement. So, but I just wondered then, and yes, I agree with going forward with a non-profit, but how do young people see the foster carers then? Because obviously they are supported with finance as well. So I wondered whether there was any negativity about foster carers and whether that is sometimes part of an issue as to why the foster placements break down. And I wondered what the support is there for both parties to come to that understanding of the need to financially support a family who are fostering. I'm not sure if I've quite made myself clear there, but do you get the gist of what I'm trying to say?
I don't know the answer to that question. Oh, there we go. Okay, so
it's never a cause for a placement to break down. And interestingly, through Foster Wales, we are in relation to attracting further foster carers. We've spoken to children and young people about what they would feel are the right messages around payments, because they obviously they incur costs for children living there. So it's about what's the best way to put that across, that young people don't feel that foster carers are only in it for the cash, so to speak. And so that's been really, really helpful for us. And I would probably say that it's probably more of an issue with the private providers than it would be for local authority foster carers, because that isn't what drives local authorities. It's about ensuring we have the best carers and the best support for young people and they're able to remain living as close to home as possible. But you're quite right, it can become an issue if it's promoted and talked about in the wrong way. And young people have been very clear about how they feel about that and they don't like that. And quite right too. And so we've taken their feedback on board.
Hi, Judy. Can I ask a question as well, please? obviously, we're looking at currently that we have a residential capacity notionally of 3. We're hoping to increase that to 7. It still seems very few for an area the size of Swansea. Are we in a situation where we're having to place young people in residential care outside of Swansea? And what the numbers are we looking at in that respect?
So we've currently, I'd have to double check the numbers, but we've got about, it can vary as well quite frequently, but we've got about 30 children and people in residential care at the moment. And we have 3 of those that are outside of Wales. I'd have to check how many we've got that are in Swansea or neighbouring authorities, but the rest of them are within Wales, but not within Swansea. We've probably got about under 10 that are in Swansea, and then the rest would be of the 30 would be within Wales, but not in England.
So we are.
I'll provide that information in the next. It'll be in the performance report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are using basically private companies for residential care in Swansea and outside Swansea at the moment, anyway.
Yeah. What positive on the Swansea ones is that they are local small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They're not private equity firms, and so they're driven by wanting to bring benefit to Swansea and supporting Swansea children, young people. There aren't many of them. So some of them are the smaller businesses, but some of them are the big private equity providers in Swansea and in other parts of Wales as well.
Because there's a growth industry in Swansea at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sadly. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or?
Yes, please. I've got my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Sue.
No
Yeah.
problem. I just wanted clarification regarding Home 3 and Home 4. For Home 3, they come in from secure units and have complex needs, and Home 4 is for emergency admissions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Again, it's in brief. In with the brief with the surveyors as it stands, but what we're looking to create is where it's a semi detached property, we're going to actually make it 2. So there's, as I said, with the adaptations, there's lots of building work that's going to be needed to secure one side of that semi detached property, and then it would be the inner property for emergencies. It's quite difficult to explain without having it in pictures in front, but yes, it'll be two separate homes. They're currently joined at the moment. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Right. I just wondered if that mix was appropriate. That you have people coming from secure units and somebody coming in as an emergency where something's happened in the home, like very unprepared.
Yeah. Yes. That. But they won't meet. They won't mix whatsoever. It'll be two separate houses. And one of them, like I said, will be a semi-secure, so that will be completely separate.
Okay. Not quite happy with that situation, but there we are. Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Well, back to you then, Chris.
Okay, so some of the challenges, if I go on to number 5, again, we've discussed eliminate profit from Welsh Government, and we've sort of touched on a little bit around that. And I know that with the new providers registering with CIW, they'll have to have the not-for-profit status from the 1st of April, and any current for-profit providers will need to transition to register with CIW as not-for-profit by April 27. So already this is having a massive impact and an immediate impact on, I suppose, what is already a challenging placement market, and providers making the decision to pause or not continue with any of their plans or even withdraw from offering placements, which again, as we've just seen, it is going to cause a significant impact. I've written about breakdown for so family and foster place breakdown, as well as complexity of needs. You know, the awareness, as well as higher complexity within the presentation of children, young people, and family, and their impact and their well-being is impacts significantly on safety. Where we've got a lot of awareness around parents having poor mental health, whether it's domestic violence, substance misuse, sometimes all three within that family setting, it has a massive impact on how they're able to parent safely for the children and young people within their care. And also the added pressures of poverty in the current economic circumstances as well, and the current economic climate. All these add pressures to these environments. Increased risk in adolescence and trauma and in child and adolescent the increased risk in child and adolescent trauma and child exploitation is significant and on the rise with children and young people. We've increased self-harming, suicidal ideation, substance misuse, and again, some of these are the contributing factors that we're hearing from families and foster parents feeling they're unable to meet the needs of the ones that they care for, which is resulting in quite a high number of breakdowns. I've written some considerations that we have to do as a council as part of the Wellbeing Act, Section 81. I'm not going to read right the way through the list because you've got it in front of you, but I think as well as some of the challenges that you're hearing, again, some of the considerations, I think there's 11 or 12 considerations. Again, it adds to the complexity of the choice that we've got when we are looking to try and place these placements to make sure that we've got it right, and that every attempt that we are making to make sure that we've considered in everything, we've not necessarily got the menu to be able to choose from, unfortunately. And especially, when it says it's reasonably practical to try and make sure that we're placing these young people within our own boundaries rather than going outside. But obviously, you've just touched on that as well. There's lots of difficulties around that. There's been a significant increase in the demand for emergency crisis placements. So as I've mentioned in and around that, the emergency crisis is when we get in very short notice about these placements breaking down. The last 12 months, we've seen a big increase. Again, lots of different reasons for this. Some of the complexities, as we've mentioned earlier, around breakdowns, as well as some of the complexity of needs with the children and young people. And again, as I've written in, and I wasn't sure where to put in, but it says the demand is outstripping supply on children's care homes, and it's a seller's market, which is impacted on the prices that are charged to local authorities as well. And the availability and choice of placement that genuinely meets the needs of the children aged 11 and over with complex needs is particularly difficult. So as you look at the adolescent stages. The process of sourcing, purchasing and the development of potential residential children's homes is complex as well. It takes time, many different dependencies that can create delays and or blockages, all of which impact on how quickly we're able to grow to meet the demand that's coming through in Swansea and as a region. As we do grow, we need staff to be able to support that, to make sure that we are meeting the correct ratios and keeping the children and young people safe. And this has been quite a difficult period for us over the last 6 months from a recruitment perspective. We've had a rolling external advert out since March, and we've not had that much success. We managed to employ 4 of a potential 12 that are coming through. So there are again lots of interdependencies and lots of complexities in and around that as well. And some of that is to do with being competitive on the job market, as well as making sure that we've got the right candidates that are coming through the door to be able to give the right support for our children and young people. Due to those shortages, we have utilised external agency staff. And again, this has its own, it's mainly around the safety and the ratios, because if we didn't have agency, due to the number of staff that we've currently got within our current staffing group, they would just not be able to be safe environments for the children and young people. So there has to have a use of agency. Again, what we've mentioned around it being competitive within the market is that sometimes these agency staff are paid between £3 to £4 an hour more than our staff as well. So that can impact on, again, the way that we are recruiting, because there is a big difference in the salary that we've got with agency staff and local authority staff as well. I am going to move on to number 6. Did I want to open that up to questions at that stage before I move on? Chair.
Just one question there.
Okay.
Is it economically beneficial for us to have our own facilities, or is it better in that sense from a financial point of view to have it provided by external providers? Well, is there definitive cost into them?
There's a recent report that the Competition Markets Authority did, and it shows that there's a greater differential between private fostering and local authority fostering in terms of the price saving, there is still certainly benefits for the local authority to provide its own in-house services in terms of cost savings, but also added on top of that the value for the children and people being able to stay local and keep their identity, and being Swansea is probably got as equal value to the cost saving to the local authority.
It's a very difficult balance all the way around, isn't it?
Yeah, very
And
much so.
as well, that the stability to,
Yeah.
you know, for us, whereas obviously, you know, going out to the market, that adds an extra level of complexity and instability.
Yeah.
And we've also got the quality of care when we've got local authority staff and provision. Obviously, we've got that regulatory body through CIW, but the amount of training that we're able to offer and the oversight of quality assurance means that the children and young people are getting.
But all homes would have to satisfy CIW, wouldn't it?
Say that again, sorry.
All homes would have to satisfy CIW.
That's correct.
Anyway.
Yes, but they haven't necessarily got the training package that we're able to offer as a local authority. And what we find is when we have used agency or we had other members of staff come in that haven't necessarily been from local authorities, that you know, they haven't got the training offer that we're able to provide for council staff as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Kevin.
You may have just answered the question, but doesn't kind of outside the area of the same standard of care as our services, now do we regulate it?
Okay, so we've got a commissioning person that works. I've forgotten the role of Cheryl. Contractor monitoring, and what that does, that quality assures all the young people that we've got external to our provisions, and that is done by potentially visits on I think it's a quarterly basis, and then that's when the quality assurance is provided, and we get reports on each one of those placements, as well as then recommendations what they need to improve going forward as well.
The regulation is through Care Inspectorate Wales, and Care Inspectorate Wales will also go in and visit, inspect, and if they find anything positive or negative, they'll share that information with the local authority whose children are placed there, so that they've got eyes on from the regulatory body as well as us, the local authority that's placed the children.
Okay. Did you want to come back in, Sue?
Yes, please. You mentioned that we've got quite a number of children outside our area. Are the homes that we send them to regulated or are they unregulated?
They are, for all those that we currently have placed, they're all registered either with, and that will be with either with Care Inspectorate Wales or with Ofsted if they're in England. But if they are 16 plus and they're living in what's called supported accommodation, I don't think we've got any of those at the moment. They don't need to be registered at the moment. There isn't any regulation that requires that. But for those that require care and support, they're currently all with registered providers.
We haven't got anybody in England, you said earlier.
We do have some children living in homes in England, yes, in registered provision.
Right. Okay, a little bit confusing.
Steps. Okay, so yeah, I should just probably counteract quite a lot of the challenges that I've just previously mentioned. We've got big recruitment drive as it currently stands, with a look to regrade to make us a little bit more competitive within the job market as it stands. Again, recruitment and implementing the management structure to be able to support the growth is going to be vital as we develop services moving forward. The sign off of partner and stakeholder communication plans, which will involve the next two steps, where we're developing opportunities for care experienced children and young people to be able to support that process at every step. And obviously an integrated impact assessment, which will involve all the local community and stakeholders to be able to feed into, they can have their views considered as we develop. Again, the planning and developing of further buildings is ongoing. We're always trying to look for new buildings to be able to support the growth. But again, as we've kind of stated, this can be quite time intensive and takes quite a lot of time with regards to the development side of it as well.
In respect to the new homes that you're looking at, have you had any local opposition to the establishment of them?
No, none whatsoever at this stage. We haven't gone into formal consultation through integrated impact assessments as it stands at the moment,
Right.
because we don't know what the proposals are going to be. Well, we're waiting to hear back, particularly from the surveyors, to find out if the vision that we've got is going to be able to come to fruition in the first instance. And then the next steps will be going into the IAA then, or the integrated impact assessment from there, where consultation will take place.
Do you anticipate any problems there?
Not from early stages. There were early engagements with the local councillor there. It was a little bit before I took over within my role, but I don't think there was any there weren't any concerns or anything like that raised at that stage.
We're planning to go and make contact with the local community and in partnership with the local councillors to have those early conversations to explain what it's all about, rather than just seeing a planning permission sign go up. So helping them to, hopefully then we'll have community resilience, because that works quite well with Tynant.
Yes, yeah.
And the local community, they're very supportive of Tynant. So
I know we put our things of court in place somewhere in the early 2000s in Upper Clay, and there were a few people there who had concerns. That way, for a better way of putting it, we did have a public meeting. Very few people turned up, I had to say, and that was the end of it effectively. But it is something, obviously, that you have to be very careful about in terms of the communication process, I guess.
Yeah, very much. And I probably should have explained a little bit about what the stakeholder communication plan was about. It's very much getting the right people to have those conversations from the outset before we go into it, before we move on to the next phases, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to move on to Tynant. Okay, so as you mentioned, we were visited through Care Inspectorate during June 2022 as part of the annual inspection and follow-up programme. So the following areas have been highlighted for improvements for the improvements that need to be made since the full inspection in May 21. So impact assessments and matching processes, admissions paperwork, staff supervision and training, the employment and education and training offer to children and young people, the activity offer and food offer, as well as the review and statement of purpose. So some of those areas, I don't know if you want me to go into a bit of detail to describe around those, or are you happy for?
Sorry. I think some description would be helpful. I quite liked what the young person.
Cheryl's got to find it useful, so that's fine.
Yeah, we are. That's fine, of course.
Okay, Cheryl.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, we will. We will give you more explanation. Or at least Chris will give you more explanation.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you want explanation, anything specific, or on all of them?
I just was quite interested with the outcomes and what the young person had said about Tynant, which I thought was really good, despite whatever you're going to have to do there. For young people, they seem to be quite happy and probably have a lot better off than those that are having to go out of county. And this company called Down to Earth, they seem as if they're very supportive and that there's good outcomes with them. So perhaps something around about that, Chris, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So the Down to Earth, every young person that attends the provisions as part of what was being highlighted, I suppose, with the activity offer. What we found is that some young people that come to us, they do attend full-time education. Some are on what are called PSPs, where it's reduced timetable, and others may have finished their, they may be on their post-16 pathway, either engaged in employment, education or training, or maybe NEET, which is not in education, employment or training. So what we attempt to do from the initial setup is make sure that young people have got full programs 7 days a week. Saturdays and Sundays are a little bit more for relaxed contact time, where it's safe to do so. But from that Monday to Friday, we try to have quite scheduled activities for the young people to become involved in, and that is anything from elements of direct work that they need to do with the services that they work in. And it could be education, it could be areas around job seeking, it could be similar to the situation where they've got paid provision, where they're able to go to activities and adventures, or anything that's going to potentially support them to do first aid courses. So it's a program that's done off a huge activity menu. Some of them are, like I said, some of them are free, some of them are available for some of the young people to access, and then it's always on a different basis then if they're looking at the rewards or if there's anything around, you know, any more of the paid activities, etc. They tend to be more of a reward basis that happens every fortnight or on a month. But we're trying to get education, whether that's formal or informal education as part of those timetables on a weekly basis. So the Down to Earth project specifically looks at young people having sort of vocational skills. So it's lots of work with tools. It's lots of biodiversity work. So it's talking lots about the environment. And some of the young people who do attend, like I say, sometimes it's the first time they've ever tried working with tools or had the opportunity to go into those environments. And yeah, in this case, as I mentioned, AA, who is anonymous, it's flourished and has actually, for the first time, has been sitting down doing units towards a health and safety qualification, which you know, she wouldn't have been thinking about 6 months ago.
So is this Down to Earth? Are they the people that are based in Merton?
They are, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I've looked at their website before, not for this one. It just and they do sound amazing because they're building properties, I believe, in, or they built them in Pennard as well, fully sustainable. So yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, they are also based down by Caribbean as well, down Gower.
Can I just ask a question? Whether daily living skills comes into the timetables at all?
Yeah, we've got life skills. So it's things just in and around what you would have as your basics around cooking, cleaning, washing, ironing, all of those. Those are the ones that the children really love. I'm saying that with tongue in cheek, but they tend to be the difficult ones that we try to sort of try to, you know, I suppose get them to be motivated to complete, because you know, the transition out of our provisions, we want to try to make them more as self-sufficient as possible. You know, there are elements, and we have been having discussions around elements that we have to do to it initially, but then it's do with, and then you know, after there's a short period of time that they follow personal plans, that there's progression routes where, especially at the ages of 16, 17, where they are a lot more self-sufficient.
Thank you.
Excellent. Right.
Yeah, and I think it seems quite simplistic when you look at admissions paperwork. There are a lot of information that we need to try and depict from what I've mentioned previous, which is the risk of guidance. So that is the act that we need to follow as far as registration, as far as children's residential homes. And I think sometimes that guidance isn't that simplistic, and what we've done is probably complicate it. You know, I'll be honest in that fact. So with what we need from All Wales referrals when we're going out for searches, what we need when we have referrals in from, you know, parental consent, making sure that we've got all the provider assessments in place. There's quite a lot of information that we need on that admissions to get it right. That'll include impact assessments, risk assessments. It includes behaviour management plans. So there's a whole raft of admissions paperwork that needs to take place. Because that's what we need to have in place before that young person even looks at the threshold of even coming through the door. So I think with the Act coming into place in 2017, we didn't really see, I suppose, that really being embedded maybe until 2019. Obviously, we had the pandemic, and I think that was a complicating factor, not an excuse, but just a complicating factor within. So what we are trying to do is just work with CIW to look at what best models that we can use, just to make it simplistic, because we don't want it to be a complication, especially when social workers, you know, are completing admissions. When it's planned, it's a lot easier, but if it's an emergency placement and we're asking for a lot of the information over a short period of time, then it can be quite sort of complicated for them. So it's a work in progress. I'm hoping that they're going to see that there's significant changes and significant improvements the next time they do a focused inspection in December. But yeah, it's a work in progress as it stands at the moment. Okay, so as I've said, the four above, they were added to a comprehensive action plan, and the management teams, which has been the main focus of what we're working towards, as well as other development areas. I've mentioned about as part of our Reg 73 requirements, we're required to internally review regulated provisions. So that's something that I do on a 3-month basis. And also then we do a Reg 80, which is called a quality of care report, every 6 months. And these reviews, taking the feedback of children, young people, families, professional partners and stakeholders. And then, like I said, the sample of the feedback. I didn't know if you want me to read some of those, some of the information or some of the feedback. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So again, AA, as I've anonymised, so fed back that, you know, I'm happy staying at Tynant. The staff are looking after me. They nag me to try different foods. The reasons that we put things in is because obviously we're guided by lack health in some of the areas, and some of the young people that we do have, or you know, that we are supporting, some of their diets aren't great. So one of the things that we do with our healthy eating is try and focus on them just having a few more fruit and veg within their diets. Sometimes we're really successful with it, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Similarly said, I have a busy timetable, but I don't attend it all. What we find is that there's really sort of good attendance around the timetable areas that they really enjoy, and is the free time, and whether it's you know, the activities that they like. As I said, the things around the items around the direct work and the chores, sometimes, you know, that tends to be a little bit more of a challenge to try and get them on board to take place. I can't wake up sometimes when they knock my door in the mornings. I go to Down to Earth, and the man said I was a natural. I was using all the tools. I did a test at the end and got them all right as well. And again, I did have pictures again and consent from the young people, but it wasn't necessarily appropriate for this provision. But when I was having a conversation with the young lady, you know, the smile says it all. You know, beaming from ear to ear, you could see it. You know, that it was permeating off her how pleased she was with herself. And you know, it's very difficult to try and put that into words to actually sort of describe. Also then, yeah, we need a trampoline, that one in the ground, and that's one for when we're at the back garden. We need somewhere to sit because it's boggy when it gets raining. So we try to engage the young people in everything we're doing around the progression of the developments of the homes. Sometimes they're really forthcoming with some really good ideas. Sometimes we get a shrug of the shoulders, but you know, we're asking the questions as we go as part of our review, and just try to get them engaged and empowered as a part of the process. So AA talked about her off-road driving lessons and driving experiences and how much she was enjoying them. AA has another one booked for the following week. She's also enjoying her Down to Earth, as we've described, so I won't go into too much detail around that. AA takes part in a variety of planned sessions throughout the week, which include weekly life skill sessions, direct work in line with the plan and goals, physical activities, direct sessions with support services, volunteering at greyhound sanctuaries, family times and free times. And what we have is a family meeting every Sunday, whereby the children and young people sit down and plan what they have. You know, and that's activity based as well as menu based, what they're having for the week as well. And again, I said staff report there's about 70 to 75% success rate with engagement with their timetables over the week, with free time always being taken up 100%, and direct work and life skills estimated about 2 out of 4 out of that week, which is about 50%. So yeah, I'm more than happy to sort of come back after we've had them focus. It's put a full inspection in there, but it's actually a focused inspection specifically on those areas, ready for December.
Sure, then please come back.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem. So,
Okay,
thank you.
any more questions for Chris now before we move on? No hands up, so we're all right. In that case, can I say thank you very much for taking us through it? It's obviously an area which is very difficult in many ways, and we would be very interested to see where we are with TNAT, with CIW come back with their report now, the next inspection report. And I think that moves us on to the corporate parenting board update. Are you going to take us through that, Julie, or?
Yeah, again, I'm happy to hand to you to go through it, but just wanted to sort of put on record my thanks to Councillor Elliot King, who obviously chaired the Corporate Parenting Board as previous cabinet member, and to Julie and all the other officers who take part, and the councillors as well. Obviously, there's a bit of an overlap between some of the members of this scrutiny panel and the board. So yes, it's got obviously a lot of work over the last year or so, and Julie can take us through that.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Chair. So the report gives an overview of the work plan for the Corporate Parenting Board for the next year, along with progress to date. The board's met twice so far in this municipal year. We are keen to take forward the development of a strategy that sets out the board's aims and ambitions over the medium to longer term. And also the board's had conversations about how we incorporate feedback from children and people about what they would like us to focus on. So what I've detailed there, I've just set out for those that may be new to panel, the role and function of the Corporate Parenting Board. And that's as councillors, as corporate parents have a collective responsibility to ensure that care experienced children, young people and care leavers can have the outcomes every good parent would want for their own child. And this is about ensuring they're safe and providing opportunities to help them achieve their potential, and having responsibility for a child's education, training and employment, health, welfare, leisure, housing and cultural opportunities. And there's sort of 5 key areas really that Corporate Parenting Board should scrutinise in relation to our care experienced children and people. Is how safe they are, how well the local authority is looking after them, how well they are doing educationally, how well their health needs are being met, and what we're doing to support looked after children when they leave care. So the concept of corporate parenting boards is established in the Social Services and Wellbeing Act in section 78, and that imposes a duty on the local authority to promote and to safeguard and promote the well-being of each child that we look after. And under a further section, we have similar duties for those care leavers also. So whilst local authorities in Wales take responsibility of corporate parenting, it's often seen as a function of just children's social services and elected members, whereas I would say our corporate parenting board has got good representation from across the local authority, maybe not so from outside of the local authority yet. However, Welsh Government is looking to use existing legislative powers to strengthen statutory guidance, extending beyond and into other parts of the public sector. So, for example, health would be a good example that we could usefully pull in. I've listed under 1.5 the current membership of the board, which is, as Louise said, is Louise chairs that board, and we have a number of councillors, some of which are new to that. And as well as social services, we have education, culture and tourism, housing, and third sector partners, as well as youth justice and health, generally attend to come and talk to us about CAM services. We've also had input from the participation team, bringing the voice of children and people, and our foster carers. So we've, under section 2, I've detailed in the last year, before this new year started, there was a big piece of work that the participation officer led with children and people about what matters to them and what their best ideas for a best life. And a series of online workshops, which was well attended from children and people and corporate parenting board members, including elected members. And they asked the corporate parenting board to focus on 6 areas that's important to them to have their best life, which is happiness, love, family and friendships, healthy relationships, it's 7 actually, no barriers to opportunities, good education and a good job, a safe place to live, and mental health. So we then did some follow-up workshops in more detail to explore what lay behind those, and we've covered that for 2 of the areas listed under 2.3, and specifically young people were saying that we need to have a better approach to matching young people with their foster carers. Looking at how we recruit foster carers so they have the skills children and people need them to have, and listen to what matters to them to help them stay in touch with the young people that are most important to them in their life. And under healthy relationship, it's about how we support them to think about what healthy relationships are, giving children and people the chance to ask questions and learn about good relationships, thinking about how we help and support children and people as they grow older and become more independent, and helping them to and all the people that care about them to think about how they'll support them to be the best person they can be as they grow up. So we're doing some further workshops in this municipal year to explore and unpick the other priority areas, and we have a new participation officer that's just joined the local authority, Josh, and he's going to support corporate parenting board to do that. So when we have looked at the work plan for this year, we've tried to ensure that it picks up the feedback we've had from children and people, so we link it back to what they're saying to see if actually we're meeting their aims and aspirations and the challenges they've put to us to do that. So far we've had input from the virtual school, And I know I can remember last year we were asked about how we can know about the educational attainment of looked after children. And I'm really pleased to say that this will allow us to do that in a much more joined up way, both the children that are in our care in county, but also out of county. I'm quite excited about that, actually.
Sorry, the concern I think we were having was the difference in performance of
Yeah.
looked after children between year 6 and year 11, isn't it?
So this will allow us to interrogate that and to know that. So it's a really good for us and attainment and progression. So as part of the virtual school, it's something that's Welsh Government have offered to pilots. So Swansea have elected to be part of that pilot. And what the virtual school does is promote the educational outcomes for looked after children, and that there's good support for them, whether they're in care in Swansea or in care outside of Swansea. And it will enable some national consistency for these children, particularly if they're subject to out-of-county moves. There will also be what's termed a virtual head. That's somebody that will take responsibility for ensuring we achieve the best educational outcomes for our looked after children. And we've had some of this, that person will be attending the corporate parenting board. We'll also look at attendance and raising educational outcomes for their learners and supporting and preparing them for transition to adult. So the first phase was about getting some infrastructure in place that will allow us to have processes and data that will inform and make us aware of the progress of those looked after children, and links in their personal education plan, and also features what matters to children and people, where do they see their future, their life, what do they want to achieve, what are their ambitions. So we've used some grant to build this software that's starting to roll out from last month. So what's going to happen in April, they're coming back, the virtual head, to give us an update on how that's progressing, and hopefully have some data at that point so we get a good feel of what's happening, and also whether that's delivering what matters for children and people. We've had an update at the last meeting on our care leaver service, and the service set out its broader vision. The care leavers team is part of Base Plus. And that care leavers team has recently come back into the local authority, having been previously commissioned to an external organisation. And we think that's going to provide a much better seamless and joined up service from children in care and care leavers in relation to the support that they're going to receive. And the main aims of that service are to provide safe, stable and suitable living accommodation, the support around wellbeing, enabling young people to live as close to home where possible, reducing the number of young people who are not in education, training or employment, and helping them to have access to other services and support in a timely way, such as health, housing and adult services. The Welsh Government initiative to eliminate profit from care is also affecting the availability of suitable placements for both care leavers and children that are 16 plus. We also have seen a high complexity of needs presented by these young people. I think the pandemic has had an impact on particularly young people's mental well-being and the way that they view life. And we're seeing challenges around recruitment of staff and retention of staff. And as Chris said, in relation to residential children's homes, we see more emergency crisis situations, which have resulted in some young people living in bed and breakfast for short periods of time, which is something that we always try to avoid. And the Corporate Parenting Board had a brief overview about the National Basic Income Pilot for care leavers, which Welsh Government introduced last year. Just over 10 young people have accepted the offer to take part from Swansea, and we'll get a more detailed progress on impact and challenges at a future Corporate Parenting Board. We also received the report that Chris has just presented here at the Corporate Parenting Board. So I won't, you obviously have the detail of that here. And the forward plan I've captured there in terms of what's on their future agenda. We've got CAMS coming in January, an update on the fostering service, because we're looking to grow our in-house foster care provision and have less reliance on external fostering. More detail on basic income, as I've mentioned, the adoption service, and as I referred to earlier, a lot more detail on educational attainment and progress of care experienced children. And at each meeting we receive, although we didn't at the last meeting because the person had COVID and sadly was off sick, but at each board we're receiving feedback and views from children and young people who have care experience for Swansea.
How do you think you're going to judge the effectiveness of the virtual school then?
There'll be beyond data about education attainment and progress, also whether they're on their attendance and data such as exclusion. So there'll be the data side. There'll also be progression. Where do they, when they leave school, where do they go on to? But also feedback from children and people about what have we been able to meet their aspirations, their needs with the education offer, whether they're in Swansea or living elsewhere outside of Swansea.
It'd be interesting to see how you report those outcomes.
Well, I'm happy to rise to that challenge.
Paragraph 3.6. You talk about the care leavers team being brought back in-house. How successful has that been in terms of the fact that obviously you've had a staff shortage due to COVID? And that must have made it quite difficult, I would have thought, to find the people who must have been taking the staff from somewhere else to be able to do that. How did that happen?
So the transfer of the staff happened. There weren't any particular difficulties with that. In terms of recruitment of staff, by them coming over to the local authority, we've actually improved people's pay and conditions because the organisation that they were with, compared to similar services across Wales, they were on a lower salary. So that has been positive in terms of their attracting people to fill the vacant posts that we had. But during COVID, it's very challenging, I have to say, for young people in particular, because they were struggling to be able to have face-to-face contact with our care experience young people. There was also the fear of young people in relation to going out and about. But since we've lifted the restrictions and there's more face-to-face interactions, it's so much more. And then because they're more aligned to and part of information in Swansea, young people are reporting that there's a lot more, got access to a lot more services direct there apart from their personal advisor. So we should have reached. Yeah, so when this was reported at Corporate Parenting Board, it had started and they were confident it would be completed within the time frame. So they'd had commissioned the work. It was the provider, and it was building on an existing system, so it wasn't starting from scratch. But I'll have to double check in terms of have they actually finally completed, but they were on track with their project implementation plan. At the point they reported to Corporate Parenting Board, yes.
Yeah, can I ask you? Can I? There must be in bed and breakfast at the moment, and again, how are they monitored through the state?
I asked this question the other day, and I think we had, as of the day that I asked it, we had none. And that's the position we have been in for a long time, but over a period of 3 months, we have between 2 and 5. So when they're living in bed and breakfast, they have regular contact from their personal advisor. They're normally gone past the point of having a social worker, but also we find they're supported from other agencies, so they will see them as well. But we probably increase the frequency of contact with them when they're in a bed and breakfast to make sure that they're okay. And we could try and keep the staying there as short as possible. The challenge we have is move on options. So where they're ready to move into independent accommodation, there's a lack of availability in Swansea at the moment, so it's quite challenging to move young people, say 20 plus, where they're ready for their own place to be able to move on quickly enough.
Differently to when they're actually at home, how do you actually monitor their activities and some of the schedules they have to go through?
So these are mainly young people that are aged 18 plus, and when they're 18 plus, I guess our rights to intrude on their lives become a little less. We don't have as many rights, so it's down to sometimes it's down to their choice whether they want to see us or not. But generally, they're quite welcoming of us. So we'd set out for them with the period of time that they're here. We check out the facilities. Obviously, if in a bed and breakfast, it's about where they can go to wash their clothes. They would still come into information quite regularly. And we look at ways that we can support them in relation to still being able to cook a meal, because you can't do that in a bed and breakfast. So that those are the sort of things that we look to do with them.
So mostly swimming, over 18.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up at the moment. Has anybody else got any questions?
I think June's got an answer, but I don't think it's for quite a question.
Okay, in that case, can I say both to Chris and Julie, many thanks for the presentations. Really interesting stuff, I must admit. We look forward to seeing what CAW say about TNANT and then success of this virtual school thereafter. Item 7 on the agenda, if I can move on to that now, is the work programme. And I'm glad to say I haven't lost it today. It's on my desk in front of me. I'm losing it, so that's good. Interesting to see what the information coming off Wix is like for the next meeting, I think, with the performance monitoring. Watching that closely. There we are. That's fine. And we look to the other 2 reports as well, and the rest of the work programme is as it says at the moment, but we will change that if and when it becomes necessary, with the agreement of everybody concerned is what it amounts to. So on that basis, unless anybody's got any questions on the work programme, let's say once again, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Thank you, members, for your attendance, and hopefully look forward to seeing you at the next meeting on the 5th of December. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you.